Yet when I went there, I had the most lovely conversations. I came back feeling so nourished. It's like eating a big, nutritious meal instead of fast food.
100%. Hello and welcome to Mamamia Out Loud and to our Friday show. You won't hear any news on this show today, which is a shame. Well, actually, it's lucky because hardly anything's happened this week.
Really slow.
Very quiet news week. Anyway, we are taking a deep breath. We are leaving all of that in the week behind us and just having a chat, aren't we? Today is Friday the 24th of January and I'm Holly Wainwright.
I'm Mia Freedman.
And I'm Jessie Stephens.
And on the show today, are you more antisocial than you used to be, than your parents were, than you'd like to be? Welcome, friends, to the antisocial century where we'd just like everyone else to bugger off. Also, a doco Mia's obsessed with, a podcast for superfans, and a trademark Jessie Stephens depressing TV show. Yes, it's recommendations. And our best and worst of the week. Jessie had a very bad Tuesday. I met a beautiful supervillain and Mia's brain is betraying her. But first, I want to ask you about something. Should children stand up when an adult enters the room?
I don't hate it. Do you hate it?
Well, if I want to sit down, they should, and there's not enough chairs. I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Should they stand up when their mother enters the room? I'm asking because Maria Shriver, who's a Kennedy of sorts and Arnold Schwarzenegger's ex-wife, says she has always made her 4 now adult kids do that. Here's what she says about it.
When Maria comes into her home and there are children there, kids, her sons, her daughters, and their friends, they stand up.
Yeah, I make them stand up.
She makes them literally.
I used to make them. Now they just do stand up. Yeah, they.
But what?
Well, my mother did that. So there's many things that I've emulated from my mother. But my grandmother and my mother were big on manners. So, when somebody who was older walked in the room, aka my mother, everybody stood up.
Jessie, your daughter's just started walking. Is it time to implement this? On your feet, Luna.
You know what? She kind of does it now because often when I walk into a room, she wants to be picked up. So this is probably the only moment in my life where she will do it. I don't hate this. I reckon it says, I acknowledge you. I like what Shriver says about, you often walk into a room and kids are on tablets or phones or a television. It's like you're just white noise in the background. And I reckon do what you want in your own house to teach respect and etiquette. But I look back at my childhood and no hate to my parents, but there were some basic etiquette rules I feel as though I missed and I had to learn in adulthood.
Like what?
I only learnt very recently that when you're at a table with people and you pour yourself a glass of water like at a restaurant or something, then you should also pour them a glass of water. I was never taught that because we didn't really go out to dinner that much, so I didn't know. And also I remember going to a girl I went to high school with, we were maybe 15 and she had like a dinner party at her house and she wanted to have like a soiree and they served us dinner and I didn't know what to do with my knife and fork. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do when it was finished. And her mother came over and made some comment about like, no one's ever taught you to use a knife and fork. And I was like, your daughter is a bitch. I would rather not know how to use a knife and fork than be Satan.
Mia, can you imagine a world in which you entered a room and your children all stood up?
It made me think of that expression, if you want someone to be happy when you get home and you've got teenagers, buy a dog. And I do have a dog and both my dogs is both of them jump up actually.
Which is a behavioural issue. That's another.
One of them leaps up to the height of my head. I wanted to not like this. I wanted to think it was draconian, but I think at its heart is, and we're going to be talking about this a little bit later in the show, but it's about acknowledging someone's humanity and their presence and looking them in the eye. I'm very strict with manners with my kids. I mean, it's funny. My adult son was at my house the other day and my mum came over. She really wanted to see her now adult grandchildren. And he was my sons, my daughter, of course, was talking to my mum. My 2 sons were on their phones, texting, doing something. And I elbowed my eldest son, who is 27, and said, get off your phone. Like, put your phone down. And he looked daggers at me and said, do not ever say that to me again. I went, I will. I will say that to you. I'll say that to you again. Pick up your phone again, I'll say it again. Can't stop me.
But there's a world of difference, right? Because I agree with you. Like when I walk into my house and I'm like, hi, and nobody says anything, I get really shitty. And I'll be like, you will come and say hello. But there's a world of difference between looking up from a phone and actually like standing up straight, like, you know, like the Queen's
I think
just
acknowledging
walked in.
someone walking into a room is really important. And I think the thing with phones, I once read this about a director who would not let phones on his set. And he talked about how even if you weren't directly involved in the part of the conversation that was happening at that time, one person looking at their phone leaches energy out of the conversation, even if they're not interrupting or anything like that. And that's true. And so when my two sons were doing that, and my mum, I knew was so excited to be over and seeing them, and they were probably doing whatever urgent thing has to be done in the moment, which is never very urgent. It was leaching energy out of the interaction
100%.
and out of the conversation. It was really dehumanizing.
Do you think that because she's Maria Shriver and her children are with Arnold Schwarzenegger and they have 4 kids, do you think that the expectation, if you're a parent and you know you're famous, you're rich, you're privileged, that you have to raise your children in a particular way to almost circumvent that so that your children have almost more respect than the average
she's a
kid?
Kennedy, Maria Shriver.
Yeah,
and her
yes.
mother, Eunice, was a Kennedy.
I think that's more part of it. It's very waspy, old school, like respect, you know, call me mom like vibes. It's very that. But also, yes, you often hear celebrities talk about how important manners are in their kids because I think they think that everybody thinks their kids are going to be entitled brats and they want to counter program. But I still think there is a lot of difference between manners and you have to stand up when I walk in the room. I just can't even imagine it.
Holly has a rule, a parenting. You know how Holly gives out so much parenting advice.
yes,
She's
I
very
do,
wise.
such a
And
guru.
I've actually kept this one. And it's that when your child walks or crawls or rolls into a room, you smile at them.
Yeah.
Always.
You always have to be
I
happy
like
to
that.
see them.
Yeah,
I love
always have
that.
to be happy to see them. That's a good rule. The Antisocial Century. That's the cover story on the February issue of The Atlantic, written by Derek Thompson. He opens the feature with a vignette of a bar, or imagine a restaurant, right? And the tables and chairs are empty. The bar where people once sat, maybe even solo, talking to the barman or woman, is now covered in brown paper bags. And a person walks in, takes their bag, barely speaks to the staff, and retreats back to their home. Thompson argues that solitude is impacting our personalities. There are a bunch of statistics. Drinks with friends has declined by 30% over 20 years. Rituals of togetherness, like going to the cinema, has been replaced by watching a movie at home. And solitude, he says, is different to loneliness. Loneliness is an important human emotion that gives us a biological cue to go and seek out a social experience. The thing about solitude is that we're choosing it. We predict that alone time will make us happier, and all the research says it absolutely does not. Solitude has
Disagree.
With the research. She disagrees with the research.
Okay, I'm going to tell you how it's transformed the economy and then politics, and then I'm going to
Come back to you.
Solitude has transformed the economy. You know, we talk about remote work. There is a researcher named Patrick Sharkey who calls it remote life, with the entire economy oriented around how to allow us to stay within our own 4 walls. Now, you might say, okay, doesn't that mean we're spending more time with our families? And in fact, some research suggests we are, our intimate partner, for example. But what's missing is what they call the middle circle, the neighbours, the people in our little village. And while the close ring, kids, partners, teach us love and intimacy, the middle ring teaches us something called tolerance. And it's foundational to a democracy. That's how solitude is changing politics.
So the middle ring, do you mean just the interactions that we have with people, getting on the bus, you know, sitting on the train, buying something in a shop?
The example they gave too was like
The PNC, we call it.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a PNC at a school and you go and you might go and hang out with other mums or dads and chat to them. And this mum is totally different to you. You don't agree on most things, but you bond over the fact your daughters do netball. That's what's missing, is what the research is suggesting. Mia, please defend solitude. Go on, try.
I think the thing is, I agree with the part about tolerance, and I'll get to that in a second, but I think that the biggest problem that we are trying to solve by spending more time alone is that we are never alone ever. And what being alone means has really changed, because everyone you've ever met and everyone in the world, in fact, even Elon Musk, is with you at all times in your pocket.
But he's not
But
in a meaningful way.
And also the definition of this in the purposes of this research is being physically alone in a room.
Yes. And so this is where I think that the research and this whole very overwrought piece in The Atlantic, which I was interested to read, but I found it missed the main point, is that being online when you're by yourself is like a third thing, because there's being alone, actually alone, with your thoughts or in the garden. There's being with people in a social context or sitting in the movies. And then there is being online alone. And that's almost a facsimile of socializing. I think it's a third thing. So I think that there's, and what it can be is very, very fatiguing. So I found that when I did a No Filter episode a while back about the 7 different types of rest, and it talked about sometimes when you're exhausted, which I often found myself last year and the year before, I would get enough sleep. Sleep's never been a problem for me, but I was still tired. And it was because I needed social rest. There's all these different types of rest, and sleep is actually just one of them. Social rest is really important, to have rest being away from other people. So while I need to be alone physically and have physical space, because our job is very social, we work in an office full of 100 people, when I go home, I'm still socializing in many ways. So it's not like the olden days where you would go home and you would be alone, literally alone. And I'm not saying that it is the same and that it is the same quality, but because we've got this, like we're filling up on chips, we're filling up on this other thing of socializing online, that means that we are socially fatigued all the time.
Yes.
And the other thing that it does is, of course, as you say, we've lost our tolerance for the friction of being in the world. So when you spend a lot of time on your own, or when you spend a lot of time online and our whole world is on demand, I can do everything when I want to do it. I don't have to wait. I don't have to be bored. I don't have to be frustrated. I don't have to talk to the person I don't want to talk to. Then when you have to, you're right, that muscle is really, really weak. But I don't know, I find these articles a little bit exhausting, because it's like, well, what do you want to do? You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
But what it's doing, which I found interesting, because I agree with you, and actually they do make that point about how if we're cancelling in real life social events because we feel socially fatigued from being online. That's one of the things he points out. He says that you go, oh, I'm really tired. Sometimes people might think, oh, I'm lonely and I'm sad. I haven't seen anyone for ages. I'll make some plans. But instead we go, I'm lonely, I'm sad, and I feel socially exhausted because I've been online.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cancel my plans. Woo, cancelled plans. Like, think culturally about how much now we celebrate introversion, cancelled plans. I don't have to go to mum's, boundaries, like all the things that where we're like, we want to build a little wall around ourselves. And I think it's because we just want to be alone with our phones, right? Because it's easy.
Well, the irony
we can put
is,
it down when we feel like
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Well, except we
'cause,
can't.
You know,
We're addicted.
texting with a friend is not necessarily a conversation. Even if you're doing it in real time, it's a series of monologues.
Yeah.
But I think that
It's not the same thing.
we feel fatigued because, you know, for example, I had a wedding to go to last week, and I was feeling, I'm so tired, because I knew it was going to take a lot of social energy, and I don't have a lot of social energy. That muscle of small talk, of all of those things you can't control has become very flabby for me. And yet when I went there, I had the most lovely conversations. I came back feeling so nourished. It's like eating a big nutritious meal instead of fast food.
I think
100%.
that our phones and the internet is one part of the story, but not the whole story. So there was some research in this article, and it's something that's replicated in Australia, which is that from the 1970s, governments have wound back on the creation of public spaces. So we are not very good at, and this is politically, we went from a focus on community and government-provided services to going very neoliberal, very individualistic, and everyone was just in charge of themselves.
And also everybody retreated to their televisions. It's really interesting how they say that in this article they make the point that in that time we gained about 6 hours of leisure time a week because of various technological advances, and we gave them all to the TV.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like now, you know, technology is making our life easier every day in lots of ways. And what do we do with those extra hours? We give them to our phone.
Yeah.
he wrote about, though, was that the demographic that is getting sort of experiencing the most solitude and is choosing it is young men. And there was this brilliant term that a philosopher named Andrew Taggart came up with, which was secular monks. So you know how a monk goes about their life in a really disciplined way? I mean, ironically, monks are in a group and they have the community of worshipping.
Did it have
a great
insight as to
entity.
why they were doing that? Is it to watch porn and game?
No. Basically, he talks about, and I've been served this in my algorithm. Have you ever been served the morning routine of a young man?
I've been served lots of morning routines. I don't think any men.
Okay, so the young man will get up and we've talked about this before, have the cold plunge, do the exercise. In fact, this is very Brian Johnson, who we talk about on yesterday's subscriber episode. But the morning routine is very controlled and I have my breakfast and I have my vitamins and then I do my exercise.
So it's all that optimizing stuff.
What you will never see in the morning routine is another person. So it's like even the exercise, and I've said this to Luca, I've watched it, and it's a lot of these men work from home as well, and I think, when was the last time this person saw another person? Like the way we're designing, that's what I found fascinating about this. Is
Do you think that's because women are inherently more social creatures and we have more caring responsibilities? So, you know, often the only time you'll get is alone. The only time I get alone often is in my car. Often you're not even alone on the toilet when you've got little kids in your house.
This theory, I was listening to Trevor Noah the other day and he had the best theory, which is that women were pushed out of the workplace and into their homes for a lot of years, right? And they had to find a way to fill their time with connection, whether it was book clubs, whether it was coffee dates, whether it was being able to have a great conversation. Men haven't practiced that to the same degree. Like they're up until very recently.
They got it at work.
They got it at work.
Which we do now too.
Yes. And so women could easily go into the workplace because when we were allowed, because we were just kind of like, oh, our brains can do this. But men now have this whole region of their life that it's like, I'm not practiced in how to fill this and connect and do the things that maybe come a little bit more naturally to women, probably because we've also seen them in our mothers and our grandmothers and everything throughout generations. But I thought the point about young men was particularly poignant because we talk about loneliness, but I think that's a very different thing to choosing to be alone, which I'm seeing a lot of. They think they're okay, and from the outside I go,
it's interesting though, because one of the things I've always thought and said to people in my life, and I said to my kids, is you have to learn how to be happy with your own company. I think it's really important. I think that learning how to be alone is actually really conducive to you having a healthy life, because I know I and many, many people around me.
With or without phone?
This is not phone. I'm talking about real life. So maybe you've got your phone, maybe you haven't. But the point is that people, women in particular, have often been terrified of being alone, and because of that, they'll be in terrible relationships. They'll put up with friendships that are toxic. They'll put up with all kinds of things because they're like, I couldn't possibly be alone, right? So I make it a point to be, to say to my kids, I went traveling alone. I moved across the world alone. I can walk into a restaurant alone. I can go to the movies alone. Like, I think it's good to learn how to be alone, because then you choose social connection when you want it. And I think that that's a good thing. But the problem with that is because now our lives have been redesigned that we do all want to be alone all the time, it's almost the flip. And now I'm like, you have to learn how to be around people that you don't particularly want to be around, because they get to choose everything about their lives and their interactions based on their technological choices and their algorithms. So now I'm more likely to be saying to them, you need to learn how to talk to strangers in a room. You need to learn how to be nice to Nana when she comes over and you want to be looking at your thing. It's interesting, because I generally think that learning to love your own company is one of the important parts of happiness. But I think that's different from being isolated. It's Friday, and we want to set you up for your weekend with our best recommendations. And I'm going to go first because mine is a little controversial.
Oh.
Well, Jessie always tells me that my recommendations are crap.
Yeah, I do.
And I've been thinking about that, and I've been like, sometimes I just recommend things that I think this is interesting, you should listen to it or read it. Not necessarily it's excellent.
All right.
Okay.
I think they're usually crap, but I'm going to give a shout out to a couple like Black Doves.
And Rivals. Come on, guys.
Yeah, you've been on a good run.
Yeah.
I reckon she has a 20% strike rate with me, slightly higher than with you because you like
as
murders.
I'm always saying to Mia, people like different things, guys. People like different things. And someone is going to like this podcast. Specifically, super fans of Sex and the City are going to like this podcast. We're about to go back into And Just Like That. But anyway, Kristin Davis, who everybody knows plays Charlotte in Sex and the City, has just started a podcast. It's called Are You a Charlotte? Right?
Great title.
It's not an amazing podcast, as in she has a guest on this one. They talk over each other a lot. You know, like we've been doing this a long time. We're quite good at podcasting most of the time. Not always. Sometimes we get shouty. It's not, but if you love Sex and the City, you are going to love it, particularly this second episode. So the way it works is basically it's just her talking. And in the first episode, she talked all about the pilot, Sex and the City, and she went into excruciating detail about how she got the job, what the audition was like. Blah, 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 blah,
Oh, I
blah,
like that.
Yeah.
Does she talk about, is it like one episode per episode?
It's not clear yet what the format's going to be because the second episode was a conversation with a guest, and the guest was Sarah Winter. Now, Sarah Winter is an Australian actress who was the very first face you ever saw on Sex and the City.
Oh, I remember that.
So if you remember the pilot of Sex and the City, it opens with a gorgeous, skinny, white blonde lady in the back of a taxi, and she was an English journalist who just moved from London to New York to live the single lady dream, and it all crumbles.
Oh, they used to do sort of vox pops at the beginning, didn't
And
they?
she was basically setting up the whole premise that, you know, New York's full of toxic bachelors, and she gets ghosted, not that they call that then. She also was the first person to have sex in the City. And she tells a very funny story about how she didn't know she was going to have to be nude, but then she was. And Kristin Davis says, oh, I remember sitting in my trailer getting my makeup done. And a woman came running in going, quick, we need a cup of ice cubes for Sarah Winter's nipples.
Oh, that's great.
And then the two of them get talking about dating and dating in midlife and the weirdest dates they've ever been on. And Sarah Winter once went on a date with a man who only ate baby food, and also once went on a date with a guy, first date, who in the middle of the meal went into the kitchen, picked up a prearranged guitar,
Oh, no.
and sat down and sang to her Kiss the Girl from Little Mermaid musical, complete with fake Jamaican accent.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, wow.
That's going to resonate for a lot of mid-women who are dating.
It was
similar story that's as
fun.
cringy as that is in Britney Spears' memoir when she talked about Justin Timberlake playing the guitar after her abortion.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
Like, just put the guitars away,
That
guys.
should be illegal.
Anyway, so if you are a Sex and the City nut, there is a lot of detail in this. Kristin Davis is very likeable. The question of are you a Charlotte, she kind of ends on. She decides she's not really even a Charlotte herself, etc. If you like Sex and the City, you can love it. That's my record this week.
I want to recommend a TV show. It is called Lockerbie, A Search for Truth. It's on 7+
That
and
sounds
Binge.
fun.
It will not be fun.
It is about the Lockerbie air disaster, which I vaguely knew about. Holly, were you familiar?
I lived through this,
Yes. So it basically what happened was on the 21st of December 1988, a Pan Am flight that was going from Heathrow to New York exploded over a small town in Scotland called Lockerbie. So this is a true story.
I love how you say it's a true story as if there aren't some of us who are listening who were alive then.
And
Back
there
in
are
the
some
olden
who-
days.
I forget.
remember. Yeah.
There are some. This
Yeah.
is 2 years before I was born. 259 people were killed as well as 11 residents. And it was just the most horrific disaster. So this is all set up in the first episode, but the rest of the series follows Dr. Jim Swire, played by Colin Firth.
Oh, so it's a drama.
It's a drama.
Did they ever find out who did it? What happened?
Well, that's what this whole series is about. And everyone I've spoken to has gone, who did that again?
Yeah, it's
because there
true.
was so much confusion.
I don't remember the end of that story.
That was the Cold War, and there was a lot of argy-bargy between Russia and America. And was it Russia? Was it Russia?
No.
By accident?
So his daughter Flora was on that flight, and he was a GP and became fixated on this case. He was in the courtroom every single day, and someone has been tried and convicted of this crime.
For what cause?
I won't spoil it because someone was convicted, but there are question marks at Dr. Jim Squire still has about who did it. So Lockerbie, that's on Binge and 7+.
I've got something a little lighter, but coincidentally also on Binge. It's a documentary about Saturday Night Live. SNL is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year, and this documentary is in 4 parts, and it has, you know, if you're not familiar with Saturday Night Live, who even are you? It's the most iconic comedy show ever made. It still is on. It's been going, as I said, for 50 years. It's still helmed by the same guy, a guy called Lorne Michaels, who is this figure of sort of mystery and is absolutely iconic. And some of the people that have come from Saturday Night Live, Will Ferrell, Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Pete Davidson, Kristen Wiig.
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, Eddie Murphy, going back. It doesn't go back too much to I've watched 3 of the 4 episodes. It doesn't go back too much to like the origins of it. I've read like an oral history book about Saturday Night Live because I'm just so fascinated by Lorne, who's like this Svengali. I'm fascinated about the way it all works because literally they record at midnight on Saturday night or 11:30 or something. And they start the show with nothing at the beginning of the week and a guest celebrity host, and then by Saturday night the line is that they don't put the show to air because it's ready. They put the show to air because it's time. And so in the first part, they talk about, they go through a whole lot of people, famous people like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and all of them, and they talk about their audition, and you see their audition tapes because the audition process is extraordinary. That episode's called 5 Minutes. And then there's they spend a week in the writer's room, quite a recent week when Eora Nation was the guest host, and it shows behind the scenes of what that week's like. It's so good. It's fantastic. So that's on Binge, 4-part, really, really easy to watch.
It's time for Best and Worst. This is a part of the show where we share a little bit from our personal lives. Mia, what was your worst?
My worst of the week was my brain, and there's an upside to this in that I found it very, very hard to get back to work last week. Not because I didn't want to go back to work, but because I literally found my brain had forgotten how to go back to work. Now, I know I'm not the Lone Ranger here. It's often hard remembering how to work. I feel particularly in that after that Christmas break because it's almost like the days you get if you get to take a break over the Christmas are worth 2 or 3 times as much as an ordinary holiday at any other time of the year because no one is working. So your emails stop. You're not getting so many texts. You can really just switch off. And for me, I did more than I ever have, or more than I have for a really, really long time. This holiday, I completely unwound for 3 weeks. And so what I found challenging about last week was remembering how to do lots of things at once, remembering how to be places at certain times, remembering what it felt like when lots of people wanted something from me and I had to basically fraction my attention span. And I take medication for my ADHD. I didn't take it much over the holidays. I took it a little bit, but mostly I didn't. I was back on this week and I've had to adjust my medication because it just wasn't cutting it. I don't know if, some people think, well, for me, it hasn't been a case of set and forget. I'm always sort of adjusting my medication depending on what else is going on in my life and what I need my brain to do. So I found that my most challenging thing. I felt really frazzled last week. I missed deadlines. I've kept losing things, forgetting things. But this week has been much better. My best of the week, because I'm such a basic bitch, has been weight training. Last year I went to see a pelvic physio who told me all these exercises I had to do, which I haven't done even one time since then. But what I have done is weight training because she said, I'm going to mangle this, but she said if you basically eat all the same things and do all the same exercise, don't change anything, you will still lose, 10%, 5% of bone and muscle mass every year from this age. And I was like, cool. So strength training, weight training, I've always just been really a cardio person. I've been doing a bit of Pilates at home on a reformer for the last couple of years. But weights is not anything that I've ever really done. And so it took me a little while to find out what I should do and how I should do it. Now I'm doing weight training with dumbbells, not very heavy ones. And I've also got my weight vest that I wear.
One of two,
and
as discussed.
One of 2 weight vests. And I feel strong. Like,
How
I don't
good
think I
does it
look any
feel?
different, but I feel strong, and I've forgotten how nice that feels. I've never really done weights. I've always sort of just done cardio for my exercise to give me those endorphins. And I don't know, I look forward to doing my weights. I don't do them every day.
So are you doing it? So I was going to say, because you famously do your exercise every morning at the
7
same
days
time,
a week.
7 days a week. And so you've changed your routine of what
I
you
have.
do.
So I'm doing
And
less cardio.
How are you handling the change to routine?
I'm really loving it. Like I don't like being forced to change, but every so often I will change something.
How do you know what to do? Are you using an app? Do you have a program?
I've been looking on YouTube.
Okay.
And there's some things on Move. If you don't have any equipment, there's some great workouts on Move where you can use your
Body weight.
body weight as a weight, which is also really effective and essentially does the same thing. I've been looking at some videos on YouTube depending on what it is that I want to do.
The greatest benefit I have had, I mean, the first is that no injuries. Like,
Are you doing it too?
yeah, heaps of weight training. And I've found that things like getting that period where you do your back or whatever, that's just not happened. And the second thing is posture. I think my posture has totally changed, and it is such a good feeling.
Because you're in those years of carrying a toddler.
Yeah.
And picking a baby up and down where you can really mess you back for a good few years.
Yeah. Because I was like, I'm sick of waking up and having a sore back or a sore hip or whatever. And I thought if I'm going to get pregnant again in whenever, then, the one thing that might help is a bit of weight training.
Do you do weights, Hole?
But I need to. I've got a weight vest and I'm going to. I'm one of those people, and I'm sure there are lots of Out Louders listening who've not quite restarted
Oh, yeah.
the 2025 version of myself. It's coming.
Starts in Feb. Holly, what's your worst?
My worst is that a really beautiful vine with loads of flowers on it that I thought was making my life and my garden more beautiful turned out to be a poisonous supervillain that was strangling all my plants.
Oh, wow.
Poisonous in what way? Poisonous to touch?
Poisonous. It's called a moth vine, and it was growing up this fence, and I thought, that looks really pretty. It was growing so fast. Like, you'd look away and look back, and it's grown. And I was twisting it around this fence because I was thinking, that's going to look so pretty. And then I took a picture of it.
Oh, no. Did Instagram tell you?
It's like, no, darling. When the sap in it is poisonous, it can hurt dogs, and also because it's so fast growing, it just wants to get on all your other plants and strangle them.
Jesus.
Oh.
It's a whole Marvel movie
It feels
happening
like
in
a
Holly's
metaphor
garden.
for 2025.
And I went out there, and so I had to pull it out, and then my fence is all barricaded. And then I noticed, while I was I have been doing some exercise, I was on my exercise bike, and I was looking out the window, and I noticed that the fucking thing is all over my fence, strangling my jasmine.
It's
Not
the
happy.
Elon Musk of plants.
It really is. So that was disturbing. My best, however, I'm very excited about. Finally, this weekend, I managed to get Matilda to watch Twilight with me. Now, I've been begging Matilda to watch the Twilight movies
They're
with me.
so fun.
For years.
I missed them.
When the Twilights were a thing, I was working in Gossip Mags, and for a while there, Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart, Taylor Lautner, they were everything, right? So I was invested because, I kind of had to be. I read them all, even though I was way too old to be reading that shit.
I read them as adults.
Yeah, I
I read them
all.
as an adult.
And I do know, before anyone asks me, that yes, the relationship seems to be a bit, more than a bit, toxic and controlling. And even Matilda's picking that up. She's a lot like, that guy's
it's
creepy.
a life lesson.
Yeah. She's like, that guy's creepy. I'm like, I know. And then we both just look at each other and go, but he's so handsome. It's really embarrassing. Anyway, so I finally got her to do it. We're on the couch. We Billy wants to join in, and I'm like, you will not like it. And he's like, I think I will. And then he's like, no, I really don't. We watched all of Twilight, and then immediately she was like, oh, and the next one. I was like, yes.
I don't even know what they're about. It's just a whole, don't explain them to me.
You know
Mate.
what's next?
What?
50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, no. That's
your next.
too rude.
No, it's
With
your
Matilda.
next series because I think it's Twilight fan fiction.
Well, it is. That's how that started.
Oh, yeah.
But they're just, and the movies are bad, and they have dated badly, and they are too long.
Great soundtracks.
As all movies are, yes. But what that author did, because they were Stephanie Meyer, they were so dissed, and for good reason in some ways. But she just absolutely nails the chemistry and the teenage obsession
Has
thing.
she written other things since then?
I'm not sure. I'm sure there will be some outlouders who definitely know, but she would have, I don't know, she's probably as rich as Elon Musk from writing those books. Anyway, and it is true that Robert Pattinson remains gorgeous, but Matilda's always going, what did he say? What did he say? Because he just mumbles all the time. Anyway, that was my best, and I can't wait to get home and keep the marathon going. Jessie, what about you?
Oh, you know when something happens during your week and you go, well, at least I have a worst. That was my Tuesday last week. So I woke up to a message from a close family member saying that, they'd been in bed and the person next to them had a seizure just before bed and ended up in hospital. They were still in hospital, and I was trying to get word if they were okay. This is someone in their mid-30s, like never had a seizure before. I didn't know that could just happen. So I was terrified because I didn't know how it had all, been resolved. And then just as I was waiting on getting word on that, I got a call from my dad saying that Mum had been at the GP. She'd had something I thought was relatively minor, and now she's had to go to hospital to get this operation. That
Not
was
Anne Stevens.
And I know, indestructible.
Friend of the pod.
Exactly. And it wasn't dangerous necessarily, but it was going to be incredibly painful, the procedure she needed. And so I was very lucky that I was able to just go, all right, I'm dropping everything at work. And I went and spent the day with Mum. Look, we chatted. I swear the nurses were like, I reckon 8 hours. We just sat there chatting. Bonus episode, Mum and I just chatting in the hospital. Poor woman just woke up from surgery. She wanted to go to sleep. And we were just going on and on. But yeah, look, by the end of the day, I got home and just felt totally overwhelmed. Everyone is, at the time of recording, okay.
Oh, touching wood.
But I was just like, everyone needs to just
stop.
Solitude for a moment. Just stay in your houses because my nervous system can't handle it.
Yeah, there was a time when it was like I just had images of members of your family dotted around various hospitals in New South Wales.
Yeah, exactly right. And you'd call and be like, how's everything going?
Yeah,
and I was like,
there's another one.
Yeah. My best, we talked about the catch-up trap last week, I think. I caught up on Friday night. We had a really bad night, sleep with Luna for whatever reason. We got up on Saturday and Luca said, Mum's really keen to have a sleepover with Luna. Why don't we take her up on it and get a full night's sleep? And I was like, love that idea.
Same.
I'm not
legend.
I'm not spending it sitting on the couch though. If we have a night, we have a night, and I am getting a margarita. So we decided to go out for dinner, and then two of our friends, we just messaged them in the afternoon and said, "Do you want to go out to dinner as well?"
That's the best.
And we had caught up with them 2 weeks before, right? So this was the second time in 2 weeks. These are some of my closest friends, but over the last 18 months, I've not been the greatest friend because I've been busy.
Busy.
But to go out, it was like all the catching up we'd done.
Yes.
So when we sat down,
you could just talk.
it was like we had the best conversation. It was no box ticking. It was nothing. It was just
no housework.
No, it was so fun. We had the loveliest night ever.
So did I.
Thanks to you, Mia Freedman.
Yeah, it wasn't no thanks to me. I had the best time. And she slept all the way through.
She did.
She does for Nana.
Oh, my goodness. That's all we have time for today, friends. Thank you to all of you Out Louders for being with us here in our temporary new home this week. I hope you've enjoyed seeing us out of our natural habitats. We're getting used to it, working out where the tea lives. We're going to be back in your ears next week. Until then, Mia and Jessie, read us out.
A big thank you to our wonderful team. Group Executive Producer Ruth Devine, who lives for people and banter, but then immediately needs to be rid of everyone to recover. Hard relate.
Executive Producer Emeline Gazilas, who could do with more antisocial behaviour in her life.
Our audio producer is Leah Porges, who loves to order via QR codes on a night out and loves a bit of solitude on the weekend. Even talking to the waiter is too much for her.
And video producer Josh Green, who feels he has the perfect amount of social interaction he needs with just his pets.
Because they don't talk back.
Bye.